Hello, hello. Welcome to the Leadership Insight conversation about company culture. My name is Christine, and I'm the co-host of these Leadership Insight conversations. And I'm the CEO and founder of Let's Talk, which is a company that focuses on bringing entrepreneurial spirit to organizations through internal communication training. And I'm here with the other co-host, very excited, Florian. Hello, Florian.
Hi, nice to be here. My name is Florian, as you heard, and with Neuro Leadership, I'm developing high-performing teams and individuals for the past 10, 11 years now. So we're both excited now to start with our new podcast, Leadership Insights.
It's going to be exciting. So we basically, what we do, we're going to look at some studies that came out by institutions such as McKinsey, Arbinger, and so on, and pick out some interesting facts and insights and then discuss around them. So what we would like to talk about today, like I already mentioned, is company culture. And this study, which is a culture report by Arbinger 2024, has shown the importance of company culture and that cultural issues are largely underestimated for the top challenges that actually happen in organizations. So you can see here, 27% of professionals that were surveyed strongly agree that the company culture impacts on their ability to meet the goals. However, also the top challenges reportedly getting in the way of meeting team goals are rooted in company culture issues. And that's why we thought, let's pick this up, because we both work with organizations, we both touch on the topic of culture. And I think that might be an interesting topic to talk about. Florian, what do you think?
Absolutely. So my experience so far has shown that when a team is really strong, involved in culture, everybody is involved in the process, people feel not just part of the whole organization, but it's more like they develop a sense of belonging, which lowers the risk of people getting sick, people of burning out. People are more motivated intrinsically. So this is what my experience has shown in the past, that when people engage more in culture, when there is more team building events where people are learning the culture from inside out, or even developing the culture all together, they feel this feeling of belonging.
Yes.
And having this feeling of belonging basically also engages intrinsic motivation, makes them more, more efficient, more effective, more resilient, all these things.
Yes, and I love what you just said, also with creating the company culture together. Now, people might say, well, we can't do that because every time we take on a new employee, we can't just create a new company culture. And this is not what it's about, of course. But what is happening, and maybe you guys who are watching, you should ask yourself that as well. If you get someone new, if you're onboarding someone, you describe probably the company culture. It's written in kind of a document, in an onboarding document. Maybe there's even some training around that. But there's not really a lot of explanation and actively involving that person and making them understand what that actually means in the day-to-day life and how that culture is actually lived. Because writing down is one thing, but living that culture and, like Florian said, engaging, therefore, the people, the employees on all levels as well. And that's, I think, super important. It's not happening so much. A lot of time, yeah, this is our company culture. And then it clashes with the reality sometimes. So I don't know if you've seen something like that, Florian, if you heard about that.
What I love about it is two things actually that you said. First thing is lived culture versus just writing it down. And the second part is actually what for me is even more powerful for organizations is hiring by culture fit. So basically, this is the thing, like culture is so much more than what people would think. It's like, let's say all HR processes should be evolved and made around culture. So culture should be there to help you to hire someone that is actually already a match to what is being lived in the company or in the organization. So, for example, you can ask questions around, you don't have to really go into this topic of like, what are your values and this kind of stuff, but you can ask questions around that and figure out if the values of that person that is sitting in front of you are actually matching with what is lived in that company. So it's like kind of an interrogation process that helps you to find out on the back without facing or confronting the person directly if this is a match or not. And I think this is already one of the most powerful things there is, because when you have culture, you have values, you have all this stuff, vision, mission, and so on already in purpose, and you match it with that person from the beginning, there is a lot of time saved that after either makes problems when you find out that it's not a fit, or you can even stop the conversation at some point early on the early beginning because you say, I think this is not a match. And so, yeah, makes the process easier.
I think you're so right. And I mean, that there's a fit with the company culture is so important, because usually when someone, if you want to onboard a new person, if you want to hire a new person, you look at the skills and the experience and what they've done, which is of course important. There's no point getting a person in that can't do any of the tasks that they were supposed to do, but they need to work as a team. And there's so many statistics around that as well, like you said, that they're more efficient and they're more engaged. So if you have a strong company culture, it really increases this employee engagement. And there's a statistics that engaged employees, so if they're engaged, so company culture, great, and you live it and you engage everyone. So engaged employees are excuse me, are 3.8 times more likely to be productive and committed to their work, which feeds in obviously in achieving their own goals within the company, but also the organization's goals. So 3.8 times more likely to be productive and committed in their work.
And I think if you own an organization or you're like a leader in your organization, you can also see it, that it's like when someone fits into the culture, fits into what is being lived, it's like a fish swimming in the water. But if you have something that is not adding up to the whole field, to the whole network, whatever it is that you live in this company or organization, is basically there's always something that feels weird or feels off. So the risk for complications, for misunderstandings, and all this kind of stuff is already really big. But if you have a fit, then it's like evolving naturally. And this is what, in my opinion, creates the most frictions in a company, when from the beginning the fit is not there, and then misunderstandings evolve. Because in my experience, most problems in businesses occur through misunderstandings. And misunderstandings, on one side, are a communication issue, but on the other side, often a value issue.
Yes.
And
and the mismatch. Exactly. And I would like to take this also further, because we were talking about recruiting people and make sure that they're a good fit. But I think it's also then looking into future things about retention of talents. Okay, so if you have engaged employees and they feel valued and they really identify with the company culture and they really are seen as valuable members and they can grow within the company and all of that comes with a company culture, then you can keep and retain the talents. Because I mean, I see that too many times organizations let go of such great talents that they have within the organization, because they focus also on improving others, but not value as much as the ones that already do an amazing job. So creating that and retaining the talent is so important. Doesn't necessarily mean that people have to stick around for 30 years. However, I have to say, I have spoken to people that have been in the same company for 20 or 30 years because they said, I was so valued. I always had the opportunity to grow in all directions within the same role or into other roles. And that was down, amongst other things, of course, to the company culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen this in some organizations that I had the pleasure to work with. And for me, it was astounding to see that some people are there for 10 years, 15 years, which in that field, it's usually 2 to 5 years in other organizations, similar organizations. And for me, it was like, okay, wow. But also what I saw is how people were treating each other, how people were living with one another. It was really like people go to work and enjoy being there. So, and I think it's unnecessary to say how expensive it is onboarding to get new people, how long it takes the onboarding process to actually integrate them and teach them, make them ready to let's say they're up to 100% of their performance. Sometimes depends on the requirements, can take to up to a half a year or full year. So, and 40%, and this is an Arbinger study, says 40% have the inability to hire the right talent. And in my opinion, or in my experience, it's culture. Because if you have a great culture, like what Christine just said, is people feel so great there, it attracts more people. People want to work for you. So how can you get the best people? How can you get people that really want to work for you? By making it really, yeah, lucrative, make it inviting, make it like, I want to work in this place. And I think, again, we're talking about culture here.
Yeah, exactly. Because the culture becomes a hiring benefit for the people that want to work there. Exactly what you just said. So I think even with the change in generations, this becomes more and more obvious. And we probably go into that in another conversation because there's so many statistics around that, what the newer generations, the younger generations, and the future generations, let's say, that are not working yet, what they value and what they want to see in a company. It's not about the money anymore. Of course, we all need to live, need to pay rent and things like that. So every employee needs to be paid. However, it's not the criteria how people choose a company. They want to be in a company with a great company culture, where they feel like it's theirs. And this is what I'm talking about, also this entrepreneurial spirit. My desk is my little own business.
Yeah.
And so invested in this company. And how do you achieve that? Good company culture.
Yeah. And part of the culture is vision and mission. And I think this creates purpose. And what I see is more and more people, like you said, don't work for money anymore. They work for purpose. They want to have meaning in their lives. They say, I don't want to spend 8 hours or a third of my whole waking life or half of my waking life doing something that I see no meaning in. And if you have a great vision, you have a great purpose, you attract more likely the people that you really want to have that say, I go the extra mile. I do the extra work because I see the reason, I see the meaning of it.
Yeah, it's really, and I think we're not here obviously to define everyone's company culture, because it's not, this is the company culture that every company should have. But I think we can maybe outline some, let's say, characteristics of certain company cultures that help the flourishment, let's say, of each employee as well. And I think one thing is to have an open culture and open communication. So you mentioned already communication. So just a small bit about that as well. But this communication piece is so important, because again, you can say something, how that is said and how that person receives that is another way of what you meant to say. And I mean, we're so busy, okay? Everyone in their job is really busy. And Florian and I, we recognize that. We know, okay, everyone is busy, and maybe you don't want to you think you cannot create space for that company culture, for every employee to be valued, for understanding every person in your team. But I think if you take that time, it's like an initial investment in each person that you are leading as a team leader, as an HR director, as your learning and development, chief of learning and development, whatever your title is, you have the responsibility to invest that time in each person that is in your team, to understand them better and to be able to communicate with them in a way that they understand what you're saying and that they feel valued, so that you can also live that culture and always have that in the back of your mind. Okay, Is that actually how I'm reacting right now in the channels I'm using? Is that actually what works? And is that aligning with the company culture? I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. Before I add to that, I want to finish something from before. When I talk about vision, purpose, and this kind of belonging and the sense of meaning, some people might say, yeah, but we're just producing car parts or this kind of stuff. How can I say we have meaning? I've heard it a lot. And I was working in a company, I don't want to say the name now, but is a company that people really love to go to. And they work on in a factory chain factory. So basically you might think they don't like their jobs, their job is hard, they're doing the same thing all the time. But even those people were so involved. And if you said anything that was not positive about the organization, they would say, well, don't say nothing about my company. Because they made it possible to say, you produce the parts that get millions of people to their jobs, spend their hobbies and everything. So they found a way, even for the most trivial things, to say, what you do has meaning. And
Yes.
so I've heard that I want to say that because I've heard that so many times that, yeah, but we're just doing something. There is always something useful, meaningful behind what we produce. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. So it's just a way of being creative to find out how can I spark this kind of intrinsic motivation inside people to make them understand how important it is what they're actually doing. So,
Love
and for
that.
the other thing, you were just saying, you talked about the communication of the values, no? If I understand right. So
Yeah.
what happens in lots of contexts, I would say, I've done workshops, trainings with people, and we work on all the stuff. And then, okay, what are we going to do with that right now? So now we have it all there. We have like the values, we have the purpose, the mission, the vision. Okay, we put it on the homepage. Now what? So, and this is not where it actually stops. The most important thing is the transfer. How can we start living what we have on paper? And that means what you said is like making decisions by values. So every time you as a leadership in a leadership role, CEO, executive level, mid-level manager, it doesn't matter. It's your job to communicate what is written on the paper, to say, I decide for this and refer to the overall vision as a North Star, as a pole star that says, this is our direction, this is where we go. And the more often we do that, the more often we refer back to our values, refer back to why. Why am I telling you that you have changed what you're doing right now? It's because look at our values. This is not how we do things. This is not how we talk with one another. This is not, you have to share your insights. Don't keep them for yourselves and be the lone fighter. Look, our values, transparency. And the more often we do that, the more it becomes ingrained in our minds and people start living it. I'm not saying this is something that happens overnight. I haven't seen anyone achieving that in a few months, but it's something that you do slowly, per, and steadily grow that kind of belonging, the kind of culture that people really love to work for, to spend their life.
Yes, I absolutely love that. And what's better than having employees that wake up and think, I can't wait to go to work? It's going to be an amazing day. And don't get me wrong, there will be bad days and there will be things that they don't like about the specific job role they have. There will be colleagues that they don't get along with 100%. However, you want to create those people that think like, oh, I'm really happy. And
Yeah.
this word happy, I want to talk about in a business context as well a bit, because what you use that word belonging a lot. And I really like that. And this is really important because it's really attached to company culture as well. And to have a group of people, a community, whatever you want to call it, and which is scientifically proven that if someone belongs to a community, this is a massive factor of happiness of each person.
Yes.
And if someone is happy, what does that also mean? It also means they're happy, they're more productive, they come to work, they're less stressed, which means they have less sick days. And
Yes.
you have less people that are not coming to work, which is also a cost factor, of course, for the organization.
So I'm talking about a safety net here. When I say belonging, what you say for me on top is this kind of psychological safety. It's when people have this belonging, and it's a huge word. So it's really like, I know when something goes wrong, I won't be put down. I won't be fired. I'm not living in constant fear. There's not an era, a culture. So there's like, it's like a culture where it's okay to make a mistake. That people say, okay, cool, you tried something. Now we do something else. And when I know that when something is wrong, there's someone to talk to, someone that would help me, someone that can say, okay, have you tried this and that? What I'm doing a lot in companies is basically helping people to become mentors. Because what helps more someone to actually be picked up by others, help others, is asking the right questions that help people to get back on track, to come back from stressed days and find like this comfortable thing of, okay, I'm not alone in this. And this is all culture. It's all part, and the fish starts smelling by the head. I know many people don't want to hear that, but it is what it is. It always starts from top and goes down. And it's usually the person in charge that is living in front of people saying this is what it is without actually saying it. So congruency is also a huge thing when it comes to culture, because we cannot just breach water and drink wine. A lot of people say culture is very important. This is our values. Now we have it all done. Okay, cool. Let's do the next thing. And maybe sometimes put them on a screensaver or something, but don't live by. And so it's really important also to be congruent with oneself, to actually live by those values, to really be like, okay, wow, this is our values, this is us. And also interpersonal, show those traits to others, to make others understand intrinsically that this is what it's like to be here. Because if people hear it but don't see it or feel it, it creates a kind of confusion. And this, in my opinion, is worse than not even talking about it. So it's something that you say, I really want to do it, and I do it, or I leave it. But it's not something that you can just fake or try to show, but don't live it. So I think this is a really important thing, because it develops really weird confusion in people's heads and makes them even less motivated.
Yes, for sure. And I would like to add like another little layer in there, because we touched on that. And I want to throw the word trust in there, which goes along with belonging and open company culture and communicating and things like that. Because I think as a leader, you also need to remind yourself that everyone is human, including yourself, and that everyone has a life outside of work. And there's problems and things happening outside of work that have nothing to do with work. And I don't like when people say, oh, I don't take my personal problems to work, because it's not true. It cannot be true, because you're just one person, you're not two people. So I want the people to keep that in mind. If you have this open company culture, and you build this trust, which is all about building trust with the people in your team, with being a great leader is building trust, not just with the people beneath you in the hierarchy kind of sense, on the same level or above. I'm talking about everything, clients, suppliers, and so on. And you never know what's happening in their life. But if you've built that company culture and that open communication and that trust, people will come to you, and people will start talking to you, and you will start understanding why maybe they're less productive, why maybe they're not behaving in a specific way, because you created that trusted environment. Doesn't mean that they need to come with every problem to you, because you're not their psychologist. But it's really important to have that trust and to understand, why is that person maybe not high performing as that person usually was. Let's have a conversation around this, and let's see what's happening in their life and how I can support them through work, maybe taking some workload off while they go through a difficult time, because maybe a parent just died, or maybe they had a diagnosis that they don't want to talk about. Maybe they're pregnant and they don't want to say, because they usually don't say before 3 months, and probably they want to tell you that before. But I think this connection and this trust is so important to then understand why someone might not be as high performing as they used to be.
Yeah, yeah. Just want to add that for some people, for some left brainers here, because I've heard it a lot as well in organizations, that people say, of course I can let my private stuff at home and I'm here for professional business. This is strictly two things and have nothing in common. This is this and this is that. Just biochemically spoken, basically what happens is when we are clouded by emotions, we can maybe turn down those emotions. We can actually also negate them for a while and say, this is staying home. But what happens in our brains basically is, even though when we're not thinking of these things from home, if we're not thinking about our challenges and problems, we have a hormonal compound, our internal milieu is now up. And this compound, these chemicals, either go through our blood or through our nerves electrically to our every organ, to our whole muscle skeleton, to everything. And they change in our brain which part has been activated and which is deactivated. So even though we think we're not impaired by emotion, we are, but we are not aware of it because we cannot sense that. So it changes how we actually perceive the world, what we focus on, how broad our vision is or how narrow it is. It also changes or impacts or impairs how we interpret the information that we get and how we react back. And we are not aware of that. So for those that say, I can divide that, it's basically chemically or biologically not possible. You might just think so, just to add that.
Yes, I love that. That there's also science behind. There's always science behind everything, really. And it's so important. It's so important to understand that you're one person. You have two different lives, a work life and a personal life, but they all interfere.
Yes.
And they are all intertwined.
Imagine you're coming to a workplace or you're being in a workplace and you see that something's off. And because empathically you're good, you're strong with yourself, you can sense in others what's going on, that something is off, something is different. And you approach that person and you say, what is going on? And you can actually, just by talking about it, either refer that person to someone who is better fit for what's going on, or that person just lightens up because he or she's being heard, and sometimes that's just it. And you're back on track and efficiency goes up and focus is there and so on. So because in modern life, everything is so fast, we have to make so many decisions, you cannot afford not being 100% present. And in the moment when you are emotionally impaired, you are not 100% present. It's like a cloud that comes up. We're hot in our heads. We're like, woo. And instead of hearing everything that's going on, we're actually busy with our own stuff. So if you're in a workplace and you have this kind of relationship that people could just open up, speak about it, and just let go of that stress of that internal milieu and change back to normal in just a few minutes, imagine how powerful.
Yes. It's really, really great. I think we already outlined so many things as well, why a open, trusted, belonging company culture is so important. And also from a company perspective and company goals, achieving the company goals. I mean, that was the main statistics that we were talking about. Yeah, this is not all blah blah and it's a nice to have. It's really based on facts that the people will be able to grow and the company will be able to grow and everyone will achieve their goals, including you as a leader. You have specific goals that you have to achieve for the organization. And you can only do that if your team is helping you to achieve those. So I just wanted to stress again that the importance of that for the company, even in numbers, we talked about less sick days. We talked about the cost of rehiring people because the retention rate is not that high enough. We talked about onboarding and all these things that are so important, and they all come back to culture, which is what we talked about today. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add, Florian, to that topic, but I think we already covered so many things and highlighted the importance of company culture.
I just want to say in single terms, culture is making you and saving you money. That's it. So if you have people that like to work there and they stay there, and people have a way to live and work with one another, it's just saving you tons of money. And even there is lots of statistics out there what motivated people can actually generate more profit for you, and are more healthy and less sick. So that's it.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the conversation for today. We will have many more of these leadership insight conversations where we pick up on different studies that we find and insights, and we will be back soon. So we hope you enjoyed that. If you liked what you heard, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, of course, and you also have our contact details in the description if you want to take this conversation further. Florian, thank you so much for this lovely conversation. I can't wait for other ones to come.
Me too. Thank you so much, Christine.